Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Cherry Creek Schools HBCU, HSI, and NASI Virtual College Fair. My name is Jasmine. I'm going to serve as your facilitator for our session today. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items. The first, you can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. The second, your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. Also, this is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to sign up for our college fair following this. And then also this presentation will be recorded, so you can always go back within like a week or so to view the recording in case you miss any information. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to our amazing panelists today for them to discuss this very important information, and I hope you all enjoy our session today.
Well, good evening. My name's Craig Whitgrove. I am a counselor in the Cherry Creek School District. This session is Hispanic Serving Institutions All Access. So this is an opportunity for you to get to know a few different colleges and about the HSI experience. Truly the most important thing for us as we have this discussion today is that we answer the questions that you have. So like Jasmine said, the Q&A is a great thing to use. We'll have people monitoring that throughout the session. Also, many of the panelists, if not all, are able to speak Spanish, and so we'll be going back and forth between that as well. I am just the lucky enough person to be the moderator for today. So first thing, like I said, is just to gain a better understanding of what an HSI is and how that might be a good fit for your student. And so without further ado, I'd like to start with who's in our virtual room with us today. And so we'll go panelists in the order on the slides, if you don't mind, and we'll go from there. I'll have Cal Lutheran start us off, please.
First, thank you, Craig. Hi, everyone. Buenas tardes, buenas noches, casi, dependiendo de donde estén. My name is Diana Hernandez. I am an admission counselor here at the Office of Undergraduate Admission. My pronouns are she and her. And it's a pleasure to be with you all. I'm a proud Cal Lutheran alum, so I'm happy to share some information with you all. And I'd love to really quickly sneak my colleague in here that will be helping us moderate the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wes Sullivan. I'm the Associate Director of Undergraduate Admission at Cal Lutheran. Originally from Colorado myself, I now work out here in California and excited to be here and join you.
Good evening, everybody. This is Rafael Mesa from the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona. It's great to be here with all the families virtually in the Denver area. I'm sorry I can't be there from 68-degree Tucson, Arizona, but it's still a great opportunity to be here once again. I had the honor to be there last year, and hoping we can be there together at some point, and hopefully at some point also welcoming any of these families that are joining us today to the University of Arizona at some point. So thank you.
Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ambrosio Rodriguez, or Ambro Rodriguez. I'm the regional recruiter from the University of New Mexico. So I'm located here in the Denver, Aurora area. So I'm the regional rep. And so I work with all students. I am bilingual, so I work with any families that are bilingual. Buenas tardes a todos. Yo me llamo Ambrosio Rodríguez. Yo soy el reclutador de la Universidad de Nuevo México y soy un representante regional que estoy basado aquí en Aurora. Así que cualquier pregunta que tengan virtualmente, yo me puedo unir con ustedes y esperamos en el pronto futuro que podamos hacerlo en persona. Gracias.
Perfect. So as you can see, we have a great panel that's here tonight to answer questions that you might have about HSIs. But to start us off, our first question, and how we'll do this from the panelist side, is whoever would like to jump in, and if you feel like their answer takes care of it, please feel free to let me know, or if you want to add additional information too, that's great. So what do you believe to be some of the advantages for a Hispanic or Latino student to attend an HSI or Hispanic Serving Institution? And maybe I should back up a little bit and share what an HSI actually is. So an HSI is an institution that has a federal designation that the students on campus that's designated Hispanic or Latino is at 25% or higher. And I think at a lot of these campuses, it's greater than that even. So I'll turn it over to the panel. Whoever would like to start, I'm sure there's plenty of things that you would like to share on that topic.
I don't mind getting started. So I think one thing, and Craig, as you mentioned, there's a lot of different things that we could highlight. I think one thing that's really important across all of the different HSIs is the representation, and not just in terms of seeing other students that look like you and having that community, having that cultural piece there, but I think also the representation and having faculty and staff that also look like you, that come from a similar background as you, to be able to support you and for you to actually feel like you belong on that campus and feel like you are meant to be there. And I think that's really important for students. We want our students, and I think, I mean, I won't speak for the other institutions, but I'm pretty sure it also applies. We want our students to enjoy the time that they are on our campus. We don't want them to just feel like they have to get through it, maybe struggling, and we don't want them to feel like they don't have people that they can go to. And so I think as an HSI, we do have some funds that we're able to really set aside to make sure that our students are seeing programming that maybe they grew up with. Like, for example, Dia de los Muertos, that's something that's celebrated on our entire campus. It had been even before we were in HSI, and it definitely has kind of expanded a little bit. But I think that's one of the biggest pieces. And it's not just about our Latinx students, right? It's about all of our underrepresented students and making sure that they continue to see themselves on our campus.
Good start. Any others would like to add to that?
Good evening, everybody. I think as we consider this opportunity, the advantages, I think what we want the families and the students who join us today to think about is really what you can bring to our institution. I think it's really important for you as families, especially the students, as future college students, to really think about what it is you want to bring and how we can highlight that, and how our institution can really benefit from your presence on our campus, whether we're talking about Hispanic and Latinx families from this region, let's just say the Western region, but from all over the country, if not the entire world. And so to answer the question in terms of those advantages, I think you would find that at a school like the University of Arizona, where you're going to be engaging with students from all over the country. And that's going to really add to your experience of not only finding that fit, but also finding, that level of growth. And as we continue the conversation this evening, learning more about some of the ways that you can make, that connection, and even emphasize too, for myself as a parent of a college student, what that can mean for the parents and supporters that are joining us this evening.
Yeah, here at UNM, the thing I just would want to add is the fact that equally, paralleling what my colleagues have said is, in our case, we're about 48% Latinx, Hispanic. So I think self-reflecting when the student does transition, so the advantage of choosing a university like ours, definitely they're not gonna struggle in seeing a person that looks like them. And it's funny too. Also, or it's actually wonderful the fact that we also have that reflective representation in our admissions office, in our orientation office, and and we're somewhere in financial aid and different departments have that representation. And then more importantly, I think which is going to be very crucial to students is no matter where you come from and you decide to come to an institution like all of ours, if you're coming from close by or from far away, is the fact that you're going to have a solid foundation in student-based organizations, because that peer-to-peer connection is going to help out for a student to retain at our institutions, and that we have that advantage, and we actually walk the walk, not just talk the talk, where we just have one Latinx student on our on our brochures. You actually walk all of our campuses, and we have a reflective population. And I mean, we have Greek fraternities, multicultural Greek, Latinx fraternities, sororities, clubs, Centro, like we have a Centro La Raza, so which is dedicated to Latinx students, Native American Student Services Center. So that's the advantage, that you're going to have those types of solid foundations of services where you as a unit, you as a student coming into university, you pay for those services. So that's, you're going to be benefiting from that in the long run with those types of services. That's going to help you with your career here at a university and get to that graduation platform.
So our panel for the families here, you'll notice that our panel is all out-of-state HSIs, and so that was actually intentional. We do have great HSIs in our state, Metro State University, Colorado State Pueblo, and so forth, and we don't want to take anything away from those HSIs. But part of our goal with this access piece is also helping you understand the opportunities that you have out of state. But you can imagine for the panel, you can imagine that for these families to think about even going just a few hours south, right, to New Mexico or to Arizona, or a few hours west to Arizona could be a big deal for some of these families and some of these students. It could be their first time even, and so forth. So what are some of the things that you think might be unique for an out-of-state student that's looking at your campuses that you might do to help support them, especially from the HSI sense?
I'll go ahead and kick that off. I think looking at an institution like the University of Arizona as a Pac-12 Research 1 institution, it's going to be a comprehensive academic experience, knowing that some students are going to have an interest in STEM, some in critical languages, some are going to look at business, fine arts. So I think definitely in terms of academic interests, they're going to be there for some of the students. We had a chance to interact with some of those students earlier today who had some very specific interests. Others, they weren't so sure. So I think that's the advantage of a large school like the University of Arizona. Although a large school like the University of Arizona can be overwhelming, where the HSI aspect can come into it is knowing, as one of my colleagues mentioned earlier, there's some grant opportunities that come up as a result. And by grants, just to kind of expand on that, with that HSI designation, college and departments are able then to seek out funding to then provide learning opportunities for our faculty to better engage the Hispanic and Latinx students that are coming into the classroom and better understand where they're coming from to support that ongoing transition for students. So I think that's something I would share on a broad level about an opportunity that an HSI could present to a family coming from a distance, but how can we try to make it feel a little more at home? And by feeling at home, it's just a matter of just trying to listen to what the students are sharing in the classroom.
Yeah, that's great. I think for me, I'll share a little bit about my own personal experience. I grew up about an hour away from Cal Lutheran. Like I was mentioning, I'm a proud Cal Lutheran alum, and so I recognize how scary it is for me, it was scary to even just go an hour away. So definitely going a state away, even if it's your nearby neighbor state, it can definitely be scary. And I think there's also a cultural piece of collectivity and wanting to stay as a unit. And I 100%, I'm still very close to my family. I call my parents like 2-3 times a day. So I 100% get that. But I would say that also strengthens family bonds, right? And it allows our students to continue to find themselves, whether you go nearby to Denver or across the country. We really do have emerging or existing HSIs all over the country. But something that Cal Lutheran does, I would say, is all that support system that we've had. And something that I'll just focus in on, one thing that we do here at the admissions office is really try to bring in our families into the conversation. And so for some of our Latinx students, their parents, their guardians, their siblings may understand English, but may prefer the conversations to be in Spanish, for example. And so we have translated our materials so that we're able to really engage on this topic that really is a family decision and the language that the family prefers. And I think that's really important. And it's also really important to not put it on the students to have to translate and be like, how do you say like test scores or transcripts, or how do I explain AP classes? Like, that's on us as an institution to do, not for the students. And so we really have taken that. We also have tours in Spanish so that, again, our students that are looking at us don't feel like they have to translate everything, but it's just there. And so I think that's something that we do for all of our students, is really just allow the family to be part of the conversation and the decision as well.
The only other thing I wanted to add that my colleagues haven't said is just the fact that we at UNM also, because we do have, like I said, 48% of Hispanic students and Latinx students, is we also do parent orientation in Spanish. So that's something that we're helping with a transition when we do get, because we do get a lot of students from Colorado. We do also have scholarships that are related to Latinx population. And also in the case of Colorado, we do have the Colorado reciprocal scholarship. So if you do have a 3.0 or better, you would get the waived the $15,000 tuition rate and pay local tuition. So that in that sense, we're very friendly towards local students. And I think more importantly, like I could self-reflect as well, is I think you have a sense of accomplishment if you as a student choose to venture uncharted lands, in the case of New Mexico, Arizona, and California, in this case, going from Colorado to all these other areas. So I think, yeah, it is wonderful to stay locally, but I think there's a sense of accomplishment when you go from Denver to New Mexico or California or Arizona, and you're learning, and you expand your horizons. And I think that's something that especially the targeted population that we're talking about, a lot of us, like kind of like Deanna said, I mean, like me, I was close to my family as well, but I did venture off from Colorado to San Diego, and I was there on my own but it helped me out to kind of like open up and just kind of flourish and kind of learn from the trials and tribulations of being a college student. But that's the wonders of having a full college experience. And these universities that are HSI really have that support system once a student decides to choose that opportunity to go to that adventure at that institution.
Yeah, I love that you kind of share that. I mean, definitely it's a big risk, but you can clearly hear from everything that you guys shared, just the opportunities that you guys have there to support them, to make sure that they're caught if they're having a tough day or so forth, but also some of those things that they're familiar with from home that'll make them feel like that's their new home too. That's great. So one of the things that I have to bring up, we talk about a lot at the high school level, and probably more than ever, is just making sure that the cost and that are justified and making sense. And so what are some of the things that you think that your institutions are offering to help support students to make sure that they graduate in 4 years and have that opportunity to do that without that 5th and 6th year? That the big issue, right, is that it adds more debt that they might carry afterwards and so forth. So thoughts on things that you're doing to reduce to help them graduate in 4 years.
So what we're doing, something that we're doing here at Cal Lutheran, is we have a 4 to finish program where we guarantee the graduation of our students in 4 years. And so we actually, I know we had the pleasure of chatting with some of the counselors and students earlier in the morning, and my colleague Wes just let me know that we actually expanded this to cover 2 degrees. And so now students can double major, and we will guarantee that they will graduate in 4 years. And so students just sign an agreement saying that they're going to be a good student, right? That they're going to meet those deadlines, that they're going to put their best effort forward. And for some reason, if it's like the class is full or it's no longer being offered, it's something on Cal Lutheran's mistake. Instead of having that student pay for a 5th year or another semester, then we would actually pay for the remaining classes for the student to finish their degree, or degrees in this case. And so there is no reason why students should be here any more than 4 years. Some students actually choose to do that, but I also recognize that it's going to save you time and it's going to save you money if you have that guarantee and not have to do a fifth, sixth year. So that's something that we're doing to really make sure that our students are, as much as we love them and want them to be around for master's degree, in and out, so that they can continue on.
One of the programs I would highlight for the University of Arizona in terms of not just promoting four-year graduation, but creating awareness for students, especially in the areas of STEM, that being science, technology, and engineering, and math, is what we call our ASIMS program, Arizona Science, Engineering, and Math Scholars program. And what that is a program for many students who oftentimes have that intention of being a doctor or going into the laboratory setting, but not necessarily really being aware of what that is going to be like. They have the intent, but not necessarily the awareness of what that's like. So programs like ASIMS create mentoring opportunities with faculty and staff to guide students through that process to be better prepared, not just to graduate, hopefully within 4 years, but then be more competitive oftentimes then for graduate and professional level programs that tend to happen after the fact. Because sometimes students come in, I'm going to get this 4-year degree, but during those first couple of years, they realize that suddenly there's an opportunity to advance their learning. And so programs like ASIMS at the University of Arizona could be one of those options for students to make that transition. But also life happens and students realize that maybe science isn't the thing that I want to go into. Then programs like ASIMS are going to then help then advise them and guide them to other opportunities to still then hopefully graduate in 4 years.
Yeah, UNM, we have it's called, because our mascot is the Lobos, and it's a program called Lobo Aim to Achieve, where if you start with UNM in your freshman year and you stay on par with your grade point average, of course, taking those 15 credits, or if you decide to take 12 credits, you could take maybe another 2 or 3 classes in the summer and finish in 4 years. We actually pay for the students last semester at the University of New Mexico. And again, we're also very tuition friendly towards students in Colorado, which is a Colorado reciprocal scholarship. With this, if that student has a 3.0 and gets admitted to UNM, they'll get the $15,500 off their tuition. Or we're also military friendly, where if they do have their family was in the military, served in the military, they also get the $15,500. It's either or on the tuition scale. So in addition to that, I think because we have, just like other schools have master's and PhD programs on campus. For example, we do have pre-law as a program, but the advantage of you choosing a school that has a law school on campus is if a student wants to do pre-law, they can major in whatever major they want to major in. Finish in those 4 years, you're going to get an advisor, a pre-law advisor that helps you prepare to take the entrance exam and also apply to law school. But not only in our law school, anywhere in the country. So that helps out, not only promoting the student finishing 4 years and graduating those 4 years, but also encouraging them and also previewing them to, master's and PhD programs, because we have tracks to master's and PhD programs here. And not only that, encouraging them to go on, because a lot of the Latinx population, there's a tendency just to finish that bachelor's and then and call it one and done. But nowadays, as you guys know, with the competitiveness and just everything that's going on, education-wise, master's and PhD programs are very necessary, especially for those higher end positions that are going to help our students in the near future, or just our families or our communities, whether it's in the private sector, whether it's in business, whether it's in the healthcare field, where you need those types of individuals that look just like the population of Latinx population students. So definitely we promote that as well.
That actually leads to kind of a side question based off of this then, and I'm glad that you kind of brought that up, because I do think it's important that obviously we're talking about the bachelor's and so forth, but I'm curious at both the other institutions too, do you guys have programs, ways that you're helping to identify some of these strong students that you're getting from high school that now you're seeing succeeding at your level, to encourage them to, Raphael, you even mentioned like pre-med and things like that, to help get them continuing down that pipeline? I'd be curious to know if there's what type of opportunities or things you guys are doing to really promote that, because I think that's a great observation.
Yeah, Craig, before I answer your question, I know there was a question in the Q&A about what if students change their major. And so I want to go ahead and answer that if that's okay. So it may be a little bit different for each institution, but if you are referring, for example, to our 4 to Finish program, students are required to declare their major or majors in this case by their 3rd semester. So this would be their 1st semester sophomore year. And then if they wanted to change it after that, they would need to do a form that basically just shows that they would still be able to graduate in 4 years. What I'll share from my personal experience is that so every student will have a faculty advisor, and this faculty advisor is someone that they need to meet with on a semester basis before they register for their classes. And so through this faculty advisor or even their student success counselor in our academic service office, if they want to change their major at any point, especially as they get into their junior, senior year, they'll help them do that math and say, okay, so you're going from a psychology major to a sociology major. Let's look at what requirements you may still have left. Okay, so if we do this, you may have 1 more semester, and they'll have that conversation up front with the student to see if that's still something that they want to pursue. If that is the case and they still want to pursue it, then they wouldn't be able to continue into that 4 to Finish program because they're changing their major. But again, they'll have those conversations before. And really what I have seen is our students by that 3rd semester, it is very doable for them to change the major. And even if they're going from similar disciplines, it's still very likely that they might be able to graduate in those 4 years. Now, if they're going from something like philosophy to biology, that might be a little bit trickier. Our STEM classes tend to be very sequential. So it's Bio 101, 102, 103. So we always recommend that our student come in as that bio major. And then if they decide to change their major, there may be less sequential courses that we can get them into this other major, but at least they've started that process. And so it'll very much depend on the student. It'll depend on what major they were versus are trying to change to, but they will get advising through all of it. Rafael or Amber, I don't know if you guys have any questions or any answers to the question that you want to jump in and share.
No, I think other than just adding on to that question that wasn't in the Q&A about, what will happen if my student changes their mind? I think that for complete transparency, I mean, that's almost part of college life. Students are going to change their ideas only because, again, they find something that's more of interest to them. They find that what they were going into wasn't as interesting. At the same time, understand if there's parents and supporters involved in this conversation, I know you're hearing that, but it's like, okay, how much more is that going to cost me? So I think that's where this was emphasized a lot during today's day session of how important it is for parents and supporters to be involved in orientation. So especially if you have seniors that are coming in for the fall of 21 at any institution, go to those orientation sessions to create some awareness about what that's going to look like. And then just kind of, I think, add to the question you threw out there, Craig, about, preparing and identifying students that suddenly they're doing really well. They're thriving at the undergraduate level and thinking about master's level programs, professional level programs. We have a number of consortium opportunities for students to expand on that because of the fact that at an institution like University of Arizona, they're going to be doing research immediately. So they're suddenly in an environment where they're engaging with faculty that can guide them on that path to eventually looking at grad school. And what's great about those students that are doing really well and preparing for grad school is oftentimes that's where a lot of lucrative fellowships and scholarships can be waiting for those students. So although they made that investment through the guidance the University of Arizona can provide, they can be better prepared to probably have a fully funded graduate school experience waiting for them potentially at the university or oftentimes outside of the University of Arizona.
That's awesome. That's the type of stuff that makes me excited to be doing the work that we're doing here. So for a lot of these parents, and we kind of mentioned that I was intentional in the group that's here, we're talking about out of state. And so what words of advice or wisdom can you give to parents and to students about that transition that, like we said earlier, I think one thing that's important for families to understand, even if you stay in state. So I will tell you, like, that first semester is going to be hard, right? That first semester, if you're at CU Boulder 30 minutes away, or if you're at Cal Lutheran 3 hours away flight, it's still going to be hard. That first semester is always tough because for those students, right, it's the first time that they're truly on their own and making big lifetime decisions on their own and so forth. So what do you think advice you have for them, especially if they're looking at out of state?
This is a great question, Craig. Thanks for including this. I think for the students, from my own experience, I'm a first-gen student too, and so some of you may be in that similar boat. My biggest piece of advice would be to use the resources on campus. Like, the resources are there, the tutoring, the counseling, your faculty advisor, everything is there. But we as an institution can't force you to go to those resources. As much as I sometimes wish I could make sure that our students are going there, it's really up to you, and you have to self-advocate and say, like, hey, professor, like, I'm struggling in this class. Can I go to your student hours so we can check in about this project? Or whatever it may be, you really need to seek out those resources, and they're there. And if you do, like, there is no reason why you should not be successful at any one of our institutions if you are going to those resources that are there. And that's scary. It's scary to say, hey, I'm struggling, I need help, but it's something that you will definitely be a much better student if you're able to start doing as early as possible. And for our parents, I would just say be as involved as you can. So even virtually, like, join those orientations. Even if you're in a different state, you can be involved by asking your student, like, how was class today? Like, oh, you mentioned you had this exam coming up. Like, how do you feel? Or how did you do? And just asking them so that you can also feel like you're part of your student's college journey, because you are. And that will also help your student make sure that they're successful the more that they see that they have that support, not just from us at the institution, but also from their family members.
I think, what I would add, and I guess I'm kind of wearing my parent hat when I say this, in terms of words of wisdom, is if just look at it this way, if we were all in person right now, if the parents were asking questions, what would probably be happening? Students would be elbowing their parents. Why are you asking those questions, right? Or the parents are elbowing the students. Ask that one question you were talking about. So what I'm getting at is, in terms of words of wisdom, is especially as you're getting ready to prepare your student to go to an institution like the University of Arizona, continue to think about how you transition, but you're not turning off that communication, and how that continues. It's a fine line, but for the University of Arizona, I would just say, for example, one of the areas overseas, our Parent and Family Association. And that's one way that parents can continue to be made aware on a monthly basis through newsletters, if not just a phone call away, so we can just kind of let you know what's going on at the institution, especially right now in the midst of a pandemic. We are addressing a lot of concerned parents because they're, quote unquote, not hearing from their students. And so I would say it's just, determining how you talk now and communicate now, and how you continue to maintain that. But for the parents, this sounds scary. There might be times where you haven't heard from them, but what that means sometimes for some parents is, I haven't had a text from my student in 5 minutes. Something must be wrong, for them, versus, say, for other families where, okay, we'll talk to you in a month. So I would just add that in terms of that parent perspective to this evening's conversation.
Yeah, I just don't want to repeat what they said, but equally, ditto what they said. But I think in addition to that, it's just super emphasizing communication, and like I said, the Latinx population, I think all populations are very family oriented, and I think if you involve your parents, however, we know with the the FERPA regulations, all that kind of stuff, we have to be open to that as well. Or actually, we got to preview our parents to that. But I think more than anything, just have that communication, and the student orientation would involve parents. They could be involved, whether it's virtually or in person. I think that's going to help, and take baby steps. And I think half of our population of the 23,000 that we have, and that we have every freshman coming in, are first generation as well. So being Latinx, then first generation on top of that. So we know that the students are going to have that additional help. They're going to need that additional help. So the benefits that HSI institutions have like ours is that we have a solid foundation to accommodate those needs. Yeah, we can't lead them to drink that water, but I think we just got to be able to tell the students that, as far as words of wisdom, just roll with it, be flexible, be proactive. Remind them that they're paying this tuition. No matter, it's rare that a student gets a full ride to any university, so it's going to be coming out of their pocket. So make sure that the family, the mother and the father, have that communication with the daughter and the son, that this is really what the son or daughter wants, because going to college is very expensive. Even though it's, say I get a couple scholarships and I'm still having to pay $1,000, $2,000 a semester. It's a lot of money. So just being able to have to take this serious, that the student really wants to be there, whether it's in New Mexico, Arizona, or somewhere in the East Coast. It's something that I think there needs to be that line of communication, because it is very, very expensive going to college.
So the next question actually isn't one of the guidings, but the word pandemic came up, and I feel like that's a word that we have to address a little bit. And the way I want to kind of talk about it with this group is in the sense of, as we're working with students from the high school side and so forth, and I'm sure at the college level too, they've had some of their struggles, and it's been either academic or it's been personal and social and things like that. And it may be reflected in their transcript, for example, or some way, and they're nervous about applying because this last year has been just different for them and tougher. And so what words of advice would you give them when it comes to trying to either explain things to you? Is there a better way to do that? Should they explain things to you? What's your words of advice when it comes to somebody who might not feel like their academic record at this point, because of the pandemic, reflects truly their true ability from an academic side?
Well, I know through UNM, it gets, to me personally, it kind of gets a little touchy, but because I know people say, I know one of the presentations said, well, you could just write it in the essay, but you don't want to re-torment or have the students kind of go through that trauma again when they have to write that down and share that. But it does help to have the student kind of share through a summary of maybe what they're going through. I mean, yesterday I had a refusal student that I had to talk to that got denied. And he told me, he goes, I wasn't going to apply, exactly what you said. And he said, I had a 3 point something and now it's a 2.3 and I got denied, and I'm just depressed. I'm going through these issues because I'm going through this online learning and the pandemic. So I was kind of like a cheerleader. I said, look, it's not the end of the world. Once you relax, take a deep breath. And I said, let's look at our options. Okay, your option is, if you hunker down and finish the semester strong, then you can, get that GPA up to maybe a 2.5 and we could do an appeal. Or right now we're not requiring the ACT or SAT. Have your school allow you to take the SAT or SAT, and if you rock it on the scores, if you get like say a 28 or a 25 on the ACT, then that's going to be a way you can appeal the process, so you could do that. However, if somehow nothing pans out and you got 2 or 3 months and you end up with that grade point average, hey, there's other options where you could choose to attend a community college, for 2 semesters, for 2 years or for a year. In our case, they could attend 1 year and then transfer in and do that. So I think just giving them the options and just telling them and reminding them that's not the end of the world. Because even some students have told me, or even parents told me, you know what, I don't think I'm ready to send my student because of the pandemic. Or I do have students from Colorado who didn't want to come to New Mexico, even though it's 8 hours, 7 hours away, and live in the dorms and deal with that issue. So some are virtually attending full time from Colorado remotely and attending the university. There's other options where students could kind of take baby steps if they really want to go part time. I don't know. Those are certain options that are available for students. But yeah, there's students that are going through so much of the pandemic, so we really have to be flexible in the admission side, especially with this population of Hispanic, Latinx students. It's definitely challenging.
I'm going to add a tidbit to that current question, and then also recognize the question in the Q&A in just a second. But I'm going to go in a different direction, Craig, just for a moment. And just what I would just say really is, for some students, if possible, have them reach out to the institution they're thinking about applying to early enough to share, this is the situation that I'm in. Because I would hate for students to get in a situation where then they're quote unquote appealing, because it almost seems adversarial at that point. So I'd rather, at least my opinion, have them talk to us, self-disclose as much as they can, because although many students can request application fee waivers, in some cases they can't. So that's a lot of money for families to be investing. So I would just say, in a way to answer your question, Craig, is just maybe just first step is just as early as possible, having them reach out to those top institutions they're looking at and say, this is what my situation is, what's the reality? And then to emphasize Ambrosio's point of, let's not overlook community college opportunities that are there for these students who typically might, not typically, but sometimes might have lower GPAs. Community college is a great way to establish a new GPA, maybe get larger scholarships. Real quick, the University of Arizona does have ROTC programs in all branches of the military. And for the families not familiar with our ROTC program, it's a Reserve Officer Training Corps program. So there's scholarship opportunities for that. It's an involved application process, but certainly there's some scholarship opportunities there. But for some students and families who might be thinking about active duty military service right out of high school, there's a large veteran population on our campus and opportunities there as well.
Yeah, and then to answer your question, Craig, about what students can do, in addition to everything my colleagues just said, I would love to just also say that at Cal Lutheran, students can do an interview. And most of the time it will be with their admission counselor, which is Wes, who's online with us. And they'll have the opportunity to share anything that they feel like they need to share. And so if there is that dip, if they feel comfortable sharing a little bit about what's going on, that's completely okay. And that would be the perfect place to do so, because the personal statement on the application, those essays, that is for us to get to know you a little bit better. We can see the dip, but we still want to get to know you as a person, as a student, and everything that you already have done and all the successes you've done. And so that's what you will want to highlight in your application. But those interviews are completely optional and we are still having them. So even for seniors now, if you are struggling and Cal Lutheran's where you want to be, definitely let us know and reach out. Other institutions may also have optional admission interviews that you can partake in. And if not, at least meeting with your admission counselor, again, just to give them that context.
So perfect segue. We got about 3 minutes left. And so any last words of advice? You guys have been just great as far as giving just excellent information that they can use, that they can take back to their schools. But is there any last words of advice you want to give them before we end and they can go to the college fair?
I would just say a word of thanks. There's a lot going on at home for families in the midst of this pandemic. So I think it's more just thanking the parents for all that they're doing to support their students as home is what I would say at this point.
One thing I'll leave off with, other than thanks, is, or in addition to thanks, is letting our students know, like, don't be scared. Don't be scared to apply at any one institution. Don't let the sticker cost of a school scare you away from applying. There's a lot of financial aid out there that you could be eligible for, and talk to your admission counselors. And there's a saying that my mom always says, it's in Spanish, ya tienes el no, ve por el sí. You already have a no, like go for the yes. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And that's something that I would love to leave you all with as well.
Yeah, for myself, just want to give the opportunity for you guys students, if your parents are Spanish speaking and do want to communicate with each individual reps here, myself, Rafael, or Diana, feel free to reach out to us and we could have a personal Zoom session, at your guys' convenience, and we could break down everything in Spanish to talk to your parents. If you're really considering going to Arizona, New Mexico, or California, and we could sit down with you guys and give you everything of the options. So I also want to leave that in there because I know there might be some Spanish speaking parents that we were able to reach today. So definitely want to put that there.
I would like to also personally say thank you to the four of you, Wes as well, for taking time out of your afternoon and joining us today for this important conversation and providing this opportunity. So at this point, I'd like to turn it back over to Jasmine.
Thank you so much, Craig. And again, thank you to our amazing panelists. Thank you to our amazing attendees as well. I think this was a great session. In closing, I do just want to have a few additional housekeeping things that I want to share with you all. So the first being that following this session, you all will receive a quick survey. It's about 4 questions. Feel free to answer them as honestly as possible. As well, also want to remind you to attend our college fair. And with that said, My final tidbit here is that this recording will be available in about a week or so, so you all can access it as well. In order to access it, you will log into StripesCan/Cherry Creek. With that said, I hope you all have a great evening, and thank you again.
Thank you.